Bob Hearn, how are you, man?
Hey, doing pretty good.
It's great to see you. Congratulations on winning HOTS. Before we get into the race and all that stuff, I have to address something. First of all, there's two things I got to bring up, Bob. The serendipitous of this whole thing. So, Western states happened while you guys were busy running through the South. Courtney DeWalter did something that she's going to change the sport forever. I mean, I think what she did was she said, okay, guess what? Y'all didn't think we could do this. And I mean, the time is absolutely incredible. But I was looking at old results, and my buddy Travis ran Western States in 2014, and I was there crewing, and I paced the last section. And as I'm looking at the results of Western States 2014, I noticed a gentleman finished 58 seconds ahead of him named Bob Hearn. I was like, how crazy is that? You probably passed us going down Roby Point into the stadium.
Yeah.
We probably crossed paths. That was so cool. I'm like, oh my God, look at Bob. You've come a long way since running 23 something at Western States, Bob.
Yeah. Well, that was hard, I got to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure.
The other thing I want to talk about before we break this down is, I don't know if you guys could hear this or not, but HOTS, this incredible race that Laz has, that Bob just won, that Jeff took 7th place.
7th.
So we have 2 top 10 finishers of HOTS. We're the only podcast that has 2 top 10 finishers of HOTS on it. The very first day when I was checking, just the check-ins and seeing what was going on the course, I don't know, Bob, if you could hear me or sense my frustrations. I was yelling at my phone so loudly. And do you know why I was yelling at my phone so loudly? Because you were ahead of Bob Hearn the first 12 hours.
That's right.
And all I was doing is screaming,
slow down.
Ahead of Bob Hearn! Slow down! And I was just shouting that over and over and over again. Jeff, what was your race strategy?
Just go. Just go,
That was a stupid strategy. It was stupid.
It didn't do too bad.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know what you mean that Jeff was ahead of me. I stopped. They told us there would be this stop for biscuits half a mile in, and that there would be no services for another 30 miles, which was not true. So I stopped for biscuits, and that took like 7 minutes. And then after that, I caught up with Jeff and I passed him. Jeff was not ahead of me for 12 hours.
He caught me on the long downhill stretch, that 3-mile downhill stretch.
Wait, the only reason you were ahead of Bob is because he stopped to get biscuits.
Indeed. But I was actually in first twice.
What, did Bob have to go to the bathroom after the biscuits or something?
In the first 10 miles, I was in first place twice. So there's a whole lot of this going on.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. Good old Bob's biscuits is the reason you had first.
No, they had offered up the night before or the day before, something like that. You can order biscuits, that way you've got something to carry with you and eat, blah, blah, blah. So I actually ordered 2, but I got to thinking about it that morning when I got up. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to stop. So I actually, rather than Laz wanted everyone to stop, that said they were going to stop. So I gave another runner money. I said, just give the money to them and you can have the biscuits or they can keep them, but I'm going. So that's what I did.
Because you wanted to be the first person at mile 10. Yeah. Because Jeff was like, you know what?
I got to get ahead of Bob.
I'm going to win the first 10 miles. That is my goal. I'm going to win the first 10 miles.
That's what it was.
And then Bob's going to run by me like I'm standing still. I want to ask both of you, because both of you have done Vol State before.
Yeah.
Bob, you have the title. You've won Vol State before. You're the king of the road. And you both have done HOTS now. After doing something like Vol State, and we'll start with you, Bob, like what was it about HOTS that made you want to give this race a go?
Well, it's described as kind of like the graduate version of Vol State.
Mm-hmm.
You mean the 2 things. Vol State, you can be crewed or screwed. Hots, you have to be screwed. No crewing allowed. But the cool thing is, Vol State has been around for years. It's a very established course. Everybody knows it. Hots is a new course every year, and you don't find out what the course is until the night before the race. So it's there's a lot of anticipation and guessing game about where the race might start. It goes on for months before the race, and then that night before the race, when you get the map, then it's time to do cramming for the final, because you're going to need to go the next day and know where the convenience stores and the hotels and stuff are. So it's a different kind of challenge. For most people, I think a big difference is the road angels, because there's lots of road angels at Vol State, and that was one of the ideas about HOTS is if nobody knows the course, then there's not going to be road angels. There are some later in the race, but for me, there's essentially no road angels in either case, because they weren't set up at Vol State. So that wasn't a big difference for me.
So the people that don't know, Vol State is a 500-kilometer race, essentially across the state of Tennessee.
314 miles.
Yeah, you start and you get in a ferry in Missouri and you cross over here, but the bulk of the miles are in the state of Tennessee.
It is, and it's a well-known, established course, like Bob said.
Right,
there's no secret.
Landmarks and all of that stuff, and then HOTS, Laz, the distance varies, and Laz just drops you off somewhere. You have no idea. You sign up for a race having no idea what the course is. Laz just puts you on a bus and then drops you off somewhere and gives you the map the night before, and you have to figure out the map the night before, which to some people sounds absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I echo everything Bob says. Just is, for me, it was more the excitement factor of the unknowns of what's coming. So it was interesting to go through that. But I think, Bob, you'll agree with me that in the months preceding all the speculation as to where the race would begin, I'd say a solid 90 to 95% thought we were going to start in the deep South, Florida Panhandle, Southern Georgia, somewhere in that area.
Yep.
And when we got on the interstate and we proceeded eastbound, we're like, okay, we're not going south. What's going on here? We ended up in Fig.
Yeah. How do you train, both of you? Like, well, Bob, how did you train for a race that you really had no idea if this was going to be flat, deep South, just hot and humid, or the mountains? I mean, you were in North Carolina. You started in Fig, North Carolina, and had to make your way back to Tennessee, to the Rock, just outside of Mont Eagle there. How do you train for something you have no idea what the terrain is for?
Well, first of all, I didn't really train. That was, I entered the race kind of at the last minute, because I had done the 6-day race in France 2 months earlier. And it took like 5 or 6 weeks just for my head to get back in the game from that and feel like I wanted to run again. And I wanted to get some decent weeks in to see if I could be ready for HOTS, but it just didn't happen. And I just kind of had to cross my fingers and say, well, I've done Vol State twice, and I'm coming off a big race where I didn't do any real damage, and let's, see what experience and residual fitness can do. And it turned out that the experience of running the 6-day, there's pluses and minuses. Obviously, it does a lot of damage to your body, but it's also training. And it seemed to me that in this case, the training went out. I seemed like I was very fit for this race, just sort of miraculously. But, to your point, I don't think, you know how long the race is going to be, and you know where it's going to end, and you're going to be in the South, and it's going to be hot and humid and probably hilly. So the specifics of whether it's Florida or North Carolina probably is not going to make that much difference, I think, as far as what you need to train for.
Right. How does it feel, Jeff, to know that Bob just basically said he came in undertrained, and just kind of doing that, and you busted your butt?
No, I was undertrained also.
No, you busted your butt for 3 months to only beat Bob for 10 miles because he stopped for biscuits.
I'm sorry.
How does that make you feel?
Great.
No, I think in actuality, I was well trained. It's just I had no idea going in how it was going to play out without some big mileage weeks, which I just didn't have. But the 6-day, that was 471 miles in 6 days, and that turned out to be a net plus.
I was expecting like I said, I thought we'd start probably Panhandle or very southern portion of Georgia, expecting to go through the mountainous area of North Georgia somehow. So
Mm-hmm.
I knew there'd be hills at some point. Where we started, we actually got them a little earlier than later.
Yeah.
That first big hill was like, whoa, man, baby, that was a doozy, like 1,300 feet of climb.
Thank
Yeah.
God for those biscuits. Thank God for those
That was
biscuits.
nice because the first day was the cool day. So we got
Yeah.
those two big climbs out of the way.
And I
Yeah.
was expecting the heat and humidity like you alluded to, but what I was not expecting was the amount of rain we had. Now, you may have missed a
Yeah.
good bulk of that. I don't know, but we got caught up in some pretty
Oh, yeah.
nasty stuff for a while. It was pretty bad.
Yep.
It is interesting weather-wise because you guys are talking about you got a cold day. Like Vol State, there's no cold days. There's none. There's no cool days. There's nothing because the race takes place in July. So there are not going to be days that are under 85 degrees.
Not likely.
During the day for Vol State. But I think your first day was like 75-ish high.
Something like that. It felt cool.
Yep. It was great.
And a lot of it was shaded too.
Which you don't get a lot of on the Vol State course. You don't get a lot of shade, do you?
No, it's kind of sporadic.
So
Vol State is more of an east-west oriented course, and you're either facing the sun or it's at your back the whole time. And this one, we're kind of up and down, north-south. So we got a little mixture of everything.
Bob, I know from the last time we talked to you after you won Vol State, which the episode is called All Hail King Bob Hearn. This episode is called All Hail Queen Bob Hearn.
Right.
And we'll explain that coming up in this minute. But one thing I loved about that interview was, first of all, your mind is a beautiful thing. I love the way you process things and the way you lay things out and just that kind of how you process a race and the planning and the pace and all of that stuff. Kind of walk us through what was in Bob's mind as far as race strategy and planning and pacing and that sort of thing during HOTS.
Well, I guess the first thing to say is that I had a flight out to a conference, and so I needed to finish in 5 days if I wanted to make my flight. And given it's a 347-mile race, and I did Vol State in 3 days, 4 hours, it's an extra 33 miles.
You're thinking, okay,
maybe it'll be hillier. Road Angels, I don't get those anyway. Seemed to me 5 days was a pretty safe bet. But, a few days before the race, Laz and Carl sent out this email saying, we don't expect anyone to finish in under 6 days.
Right.
So I'm kind of like, okay, what are they going to throw at us here? And then they just really love to yank your chain. Like another thing was they told us in an email, okay, there's going to be 3 sections of the race that are off-road. And if you need to drop and call in the meat wagon, if you're on one of these stretches, you're going to have to get back to the road.
You got to backtrack.
Okay, because we knew at the end of the bus ride, we're in North Carolina, or we're in Northeast Tennessee. We weren't in North Carolina yet. We can figure out. Oh, and we found out that evening we're going to start in Fig, North Carolina. So everybody's pouring over that before we get the map, and then we're like, the Appalachian Trail goes right by there. Are we going to have like 30 miles in the Appalachian Trail as part of this race or what? And we get the course map and the final email. And so these 3 off-road sections are at the very start of the race. You go through the Fig Tunnel, which is literally a tunnel under the road at the start of the race. It's about 20 feet long from one side of the road to the other. And the second off-road section is in Bluff City. You cross this swinging bridge, which was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And the third, which was my bane, is in Morristown down the main
elevated
street,
walkway,
elevated sidewalks. You have to go up on the elevated sidewalks through Morristown. So all these were a joke as far as off-road sections where you're going to have to get back to the road. But I was a little bit intimidated. And but yeah, once we got the map and I was looking at it and I could see, okay, it's fair amount hillier than Vol State. But there don't seem to be any showstoppers, don't seem to be any huge. I mean, I could only plan so far ahead. I started mapping out on the map where, the convenience stores and hotels are, but I didn't have time to get very far before I had to go to sleep. But it didn't look like there was going to be, any monstrous deserts without services. So I was just sort of, going to race started. I'm just kind of running to my comfort level. And fortunately, I had 2 Vol States to calibrate against. And the first day I was, my first, you report your mileage every 12 hours. That's when you see what everybody's splits are and where your competition is and so forth. And my first 2 12-hour splits, I think like 57 miles and 111 miles, were very comparable to what I last ran at Vol State. And I felt like I was using less effort than I had at Vol State because it was cooler, even though it was hillier.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, okay, this is really good. This means I should certainly finish in under 4 days. I don't have to worry about my conference. And but then it got hot.
Yeah, they kind of snuck up on us. Like, oops.
Yeah, but no, I was really calibrating against my prior Vol State efforts, and so I was, not doing anything too crazy as far as going too fast or walking too much. Just kind of running to my comfort level, calibrated by Vol States.
It's interesting you say that because I don't know about you, but for me, HOTS day one, I had a higher mileage in HOTS day one than any of my previous 2 Vol State starts. It was like, what's going on here? And it was hillier too. I think the cool weather was a big factor there. I think I ended up with 80, 86 for day one, where normally Vol State I'm a 70, 75 mile guy. But another point on the off-road segments, if you recall, there were, I believe it was 2 overpasses.
Yes.
You're running down a road and you have to get up on this overpass, and you're expecting to see an on-off ramp type setup.
Yeah.
There are none.
Oh,
you have to figure out how to get up there. So you have to go off trail basically to get up there. It's like, Laz, you ass.
that we were not warned about.
Yeah.
And the first one was kind of amusing. The second one was not so amusing.
Yeah. Yes.
Because it's like the first one, it turns out the first one was like training for the second one. It was not a big deal. You realize there's no on-ramp, and okay, that's where the GPX goes.
You follow the track.
Scramble up the embankment and climb over the railing, and okay, very funny, guys. But then the next one, it was at like mile 259 when you're totally trashed and the overpass is much higher.
Yeah.
And to get up underneath it, it's just this big hill of rocks.
And riprap and all this stuff.
Scramble up the rocks. And then once you're up at the top of the rocks, to actually get out to the side and get up on the overpass, you have to force your way through all these thorn bushes. And so it's like a little bit of Barkley thrown into the course just for fun.
So it's kind of interesting, yeah.
So you didn't have to bring your trail shoes, is what you're saying. You have to pack your trail shoes.
But my feet were killing me at that second one. I'm like, are you kidding me?
What about the support, and how did you plan out your, because you can't have a crew here, this is all you. How did you plan out like rest and nutrition and all of that on this unknown course, only having a certain amount of time to look at that map?
Yeah, I just did pretty much what I did at Vol State. The only difference was I didn't know where the hotels were, which I do know at Vol State. And that was annoying at times, trying to find a hotel when I wanted one. But my basic plan in these races is take a little nap the first afternoon, run through the first night. And then after that, every afternoon in the heat of the day, try to find a hotel for about 3 hours. And that's about 2 hours sleep and about an hour overhead to shower, wash clothes, treat blisters, and gear down, gear up again. And that seems to work pretty well for me. And this time, like when I ran that Vol State course record, I didn't stop much at night, like a total of, I think, 35 minutes stopped over the 3 nights. And here I ran through the first night, but after that, when I got tired, I would go find a church porch and lie down for 20 minutes. And I didn't see any reason to kill myself like I was at Vol State. I was way ahead of everybody, and I was going to finish in plenty of time for my conference. And I just was a little kinder on myself, which actually my wife had given me that advice on her. We'll get to a point in the story where I had this conversation with my wife, but I was a little kinder to myself this time.
Yeah, the whole hotel thing is like Vol State, they're kind of known where they're all at. This one we were uncertain. So sometimes you'd find one earlier than you wanted, but if you didn't take advantage of it then, you'd lose it for God knows how long. So some days I'd take it a bit earlier, and some days I'd take it as late as 10:30 at night, and still, go down for 2-3 hours at a whack, and then get up and just go again.
The only thing I picked up in the last 5 minutes of Bob talking was he wasn't worried about you, so he felt like he could take naps.
You know what? I wasn't worried about Bob either. So I knew I should have tripped him right at the start. I knew it.
Well, he was busy getting his biscuits.
That's what it was.
Nutrition-wise, along like a lot of us will have certain things we really enjoy, and you really can't be fussy when you're in the middle of the deep South, in the rural South, and your aid station is essentially gas stations and Dollar Generals.
Yep.
What was your nutrition plan, Bob? And then we'll ask Jeff his nutrition plan, which wasn't biscuits, by the way. Someone else ate his biscuits.
Yeah. Well, plan is maybe going a little too far. I started with a couple payday bars in my vest. Those are great because they don't melt, and there's carbs and fat, and sugar, and
protein. Everything's in there.
Yeah. I did grab a couple biscuits. They had warned us this is all you're going to get for 30 miles. That was not true. And I'd had a big omelet that morning for breakfast at the hotel. So in fact, I didn't. And also, they were kind of setting this up so everybody would race this first half mile to this biscuit place, right? Which I did. I got there first. I was the first in line, but it still took me like 7 minutes to get my biscuits and get out. And I thought that was wasted time because I did not really need that food.
It's like, I could have been up there with Stafford. That's
right.
I could have led the thing.
Yeah. But the biscuits I shoved, they were, like sausage egg biscuits, and I shoved them in my pack, and those were nice munching later that afternoon. I did fast food a couple times, McDonald's, Subway. Biscuits in the morning when you can get them are great. The last morning I was not able to find any real food at all. It was just so the other thing is I started nutrition wise and fluid wise. I had a vest with 2 20-ounce bottles in the front and a couple collapsible bottles in the back. And so I would always have the 2 bottles full, and at night, all 4 bottles full. But generally I would have 1 bottle of water and another of Gatorade. So I'm getting a little trickle of calories from the Gatorade. But by about halfway through the race, I just really got tired of the Gatorade. And I switched to chocolate milk, which a lot of people might think is crazy, but you can get chocolate milk at the convenience stores, and it's lots of calories, and it's tasty, and it's sweet. And so I had that for the second half of the race, in addition to junk food and candy bars.
So a lot of gas station fare, a lot of a lot of payday bars and bags of chips,
Hunt's pizza slices.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny because I got a message from Jessica Nowak, and she was saying, I've had it. I've had a Hunt Brothers pizza. And I got a picture from the course of her having a Hunt Brothers pizza. And Peter Morgan too. Peter Morgan sent me the same thing. He's like, look, it's Hunt Brothers pizza. Like, ooh, look at this treat of the South. Jeff, what was your kind of fueling plan? You bailed on the biscuits right away.
I bailed on the biscuits, but I had 2 of the 250 calorie spring energy gels, the Speed Nut.
Yeah.
Had 2 of those for emergency fuel.
Yeah.
And like Bob, I also kept a payday at all times for emergencies. You never know when you're good. That might be your sole source of food. So I had that on me always. But same thing, stopping at gas stations, catch as catch can, fast food, just pretty standard procedure in that type of journey race. So
what was the best meal you had at Hots, Bob?
I think, on the third evening, I actually sat down at a Subway to eat a sandwich because I was overcooked and I had Mountain Dayton ahead of me, and I was just going to collect myself. So I sat down and had a Subway sandwich and chips, and then I took my cookie on the road, and I was pissed off because I had ordered a white chocolate macadamia cookie, and they gave me a chocolate chip cookie instead.
Oh, God.
But the sandwich was awesome. So
we know that
sitting down to eat it.
Low point number one for Bob was
Like
being behind Jeff Stafford because of the biscuits.
All right.
Low point number two for Bob was not getting the macadamia nut cookie and getting the chocolate chip cookie.
He was getting irate.
That made said macadamia nuts. Best meal for you, Jeff?
Mine was in Pikeville, and it was a little mom and pop's restaurant called Scotty's, and we stopped in there, and we arrived there just like 5 minutes after they opened, and had a best home cooked breakfast ever. I mean, it's just like 3 eggs and hash browns and bacon and coffee and juice, just the whole enchilada. And when we got up to leave to pay, the girl behind the counter goes, "Somebody's already taken care of that for you, sir." I'm like,
they thought you were homeless.
Yeah. They paid for it. Okay. All right, awesome. But that was my best meal on the whole course. It was a sit down, eat meal. It was like,
yeah, you did better than I did.
Yeah, it was.
You're doing, because the last day you were dealing with just gas station food because you couldn't find anything else.
But
that's right.
Yeah, you talked about the Dayton mountain climb. That was a doozy. I went through there at night, and if you, as you recall, on the top of Dayton, there was that flashing yellow light up at the top there.
Okay.
And then I think about a half mile behind that, I encountered my first vicious dog, and the only vicious dog in the entire course. And it charged us. It did not bark. And when they don't bark, they're dead serious. This dog was coming right at us, and we were just screaming and yelling and beating on this dog.
Wow.
Finally he backed off. But we went down the backside of Dayton in dense fog at night. That was scary because cars were just.
Oh, yeah.
It was horrible. Yeah. Very bad experience.
Do you think, real quick, I want to talk to you guys, but now that you bring this up, there is a danger level to Vol State and HOTS that don't really exist in any other races. I mean, people are pushing themselves, and they're up late, and they're not rested, and they're on the side of busy roads. I mean, do you think that is that underplayed in the race, or because you guys get all the communications from Laz and the team, like, does the danger need to be talked about more, or is it just nominal and it's some imaginations on my point?
It's certainly talked about. In all the race briefings, it's like the number one thing is your safety is the first concern. But it's true. I mean, you're walking through massive sleep deprivation, and you have to be responsible enough to catch yourself when you might be in a state where you might wander out in the middle of the road, and you have to be proactive about that.
Yeah. Hence the 20-minute porch naps that you were talking about earlier, like at a church. You're just like, I got to lay down right now.
Which really is interesting, because you were talking earlier about how when you got the record for Vol State and you were pushing that, you were pushing. Where, because there is no course record to get for HOTS, because the course is different every single year. I mean, you win and essentially have the course record on this course.
For that course, yeah.
You talked about, Bob, your wife gave you permission to go a little easier on yourself this time around. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, so I said, the first day went very well. I was I think I was a little bit farther, actually, mile 111 than I was after 24 hours at Vol State. And I felt like I'd used less effort. And I saw the 24-hour update. At the 12-hour update, John Clark and Kyle Kalbus were right behind me. John was the Queen of the South last year. Mm-hmm. Kyle was a little bit newer to the scene, but had just done very well at the Capitol Backyard. So he was a big contender. And I was in the lead, actually, after the first 13 miles. I think I passed Kyle, didn't see anybody until mile 80, maybe. The middle of the first night, just past Johnson City, I stopped at a Shell station to gear up because I had looked ahead and I didn't see any 24-hour things open. So I had to get enough fluid to get me through the night. And that was a long gas station stop. And as I was leaving, Kyle came in right behind me. And then maybe 5 miles later, I turned around and he was right behind me. It's like, okay, well, Kyle's going to pass me. That's fine. But this race doesn't, it's not a race on the first day.
Right.
You're just right. And I kept expecting him to pass me. But then when the 24-hour check-in came, I was at 111 and both Kyle and John were in the low 90s. So it's like, okay, well, doesn't mean it's over, but it's a different character to the race. But I was energized because I was thinking, how much under 4 days am I going to come, on this race that's supposed to take 6 days? And I was energized and pumped up. I'd run all the way through the night without stopping. But then the second morning, it got hot,
Yes.
and it started to hit me a lot harder. And the second day was pretty rough for me. And I was taking more breaks. And then I found a hotel on the edge of Morristown at the right time of day, mid afternoon when it was hot. And that's when I made my big mistake. So I left this hotel in Morristown, and Morristown is where these elevated sidewalks are. That didn't mean anything to me. I had just seen this email that said at mile such and such, run on these elevated sidewalks. And I didn't know what is an elevated sidewalk? Well,
What
that
is that?
sounds, I guess I'll see when I get there. Um, but it was right after my hotel that I went down the main street of Morristown, completely oblivious to these elevated sidewalks, because I was just like, the course is making some twists and turns, and I've got it loaded on my Phoenix. I'm just like staring at my Phoenix, following the turns, and I go through Morristown, and then I'm like on this long highway through, I forget what it's called, to Jefferson City, and it's just annoying. It's just, there's lots of traffic. There's not a great shoulder. I thought I'd try something different for food, so I stopped, and there was like this Puerto Rican sandwich food truck.
Yeah.
And I thought, that sounds good. But then I didn't realize it took them like 12 minutes to make my sandwich. And it's like, well, damn, I just lost a mile. And yeah. And then so a few miles later, I'm trucking on down the road, and I'm thinking, no, wait, where's that place where we're supposed to run on the elevated sidewalks? And I pull up my email, and it's like mile 136. Well, that was like 5 miles ago. I don't remember seeing any elevated sidewalks. What was I supposed to
What?
see? So I texted Carl, who's co race director, and he's like, "Oh, you couldn't have missed him. You must have just been too spaced out to remember." I'm like, "Oh, okay, fine." But then, he thought a little bit harder and called me, and we had a conversation. It's like, no, I wasn't spaced out. I had just had an,
Right.
2 hour sleep. And I think I'd remember if I were like running one story above.
The
So he
street.
said, well, sorry, you got to turn around and go back and do them. And I was just really not happy being on this highway I was on in the first place, looking forward to getting off of it, and still pissed off about that mile I'd lost getting my dinner. And but what can you do? I turned around and went back 5 miles, and there they were. And when I got back to Morristown, I realized, oh, when I was coming down this main street, there was a train coming by the side of the town, and that was attracting my attention, as well as like following my GPX. So, but there they were, and I went up on the elevated sidewalks through Morristown, and so that cost me 10 miles. And then, so to get back to your question, that evening, second evening is always really rough for me in races. It's one thing to run through the night, but when you run into a second night, your body starts to say, what the hell are you doing? And
Right.
why are you really sure you want to do this? And so it's dark, and I'm tired and pissed off and just wasted a bunch of time. And I'm talking to my wife, and just really not psyched about doing the whole rest of the race. It's that point in the race where it just feels utterly pointless. Self, it's like masochism. And it's like, I know I can do this. I've done this before. And then I know from experience how much suffering there's going to be in the days left that I have to do this. And what's the point? What do I have to prove? And why am I here? And Liz kind of talked me down and said, you just need to be kind to yourself for a while. And, that you're not the kind of person who is going to quit a race just because something doesn't go perfectly. And you just got to trust, that that's who you are, and you're going to be fine. And so yeah, I did. And I got through the night. And after that, it was better. And I was kinder to myself during the nights, and took naps when I needed to.
To think about, you lost 10 miles, and you were gunning for under 4 days, and you were 4 days, 8 hours, and 38 seconds. You think, like, had you not had to lose, and it's not that 10 miles is going to take you 8 hours, is not, but just the defeat of, oh my God, I didn't do those. I'm 5 miles away.
I gotta go back.
I gotta backtrack, not a mile, not a quarter mile. You have to backtrack 5 miles to go do these elevated sidewalks. I mean, that would take the wind out of anyone's sails.
Yep.
And so it seemed like a mental shift happened at that case after you got off the phone with your wife of, what's the point of going under 4 days? What difference does it make? You've got a good shot of winning this darn thing. You're going to be the queen of the road. You're one of the few men that can say you're the queen of the road. But it just seemed like the mental switch happened. Did you enjoy this race from day 2 on more than you normally enjoy things like this?
That's a hard one. There were certainly parts I enjoyed, parts I did not enjoy. I was in rougher patches sometimes. That's a tough one. Enjoy is not exactly the right word.
Right. Could we use some other word? Yeah. It's like, no.
What about you, Jeff? What was your lowest moment out there at Hots?
My low mileage day, I think, was day 4 for me, 3.5, 4, somewhere in that.
By the way, we have this group text that's been going on for like 6 or 7 years, Bob. It's between, it's just, there's 4 buddies that are in this group text. And Jeff sends this text. He says something like, "Oh, my feet are trashed.
Yeah,
I feel horrible. I've got no energy, but I'm going to keep on going." Now, what I wanted to say to him was, listen, maybe you shouldn't have tried to lead Bob Hearn for the first day of the race. What I wanted to text.
You should have stopped for those damn biscuits.
You should have stopped for the biscuits, and you shouldn't have tried to beat Bob Hearn for the first 10 miles. What I said was, just keep on trucking. You can do this. You got this. Keep on going. That, I think, was the day that you...
Yeah. The key to the whole thing is just keep moving. Whatever that movement is. If it's a walk, a shuffle, a run, whatever. As soon as you start feeling down and like taking these extended breaks back to back to back to back, it starts really playing on your mind. You got to pull yourself up out of that bad.
So that was that day for you.
Day 3.5 going into 4, I think it was a mental low, and it was a low mileage day, and my feet were blistered beyond craziness. But I don't know. I just sucked it up.
How do you pull yourself? Because there's going to be people listening to this podcast that never run a race that's 347 miles. They'll do a 50K or they'll do 100 miles, and they're going to have plenty of low spots in those races. You guys in Hots experience some really, really big lows and some really, really big highs. How do you pull yourself out of those really low spots? We know the one where your wife just gave you permission to be kind to yourself, but was there another moment was even deeper than that? And how'd you pull yourself out of that, Bob?
Yeah, well, I think a big part of it, a big part of the motivation in not listening to those negative thoughts, or the ability to not listen to those negative thoughts, just comes from experience and the knowledge that I've done this before. In my case, I've done 2 Vol States, I've done several 6 days, 48 hours. And so I have more realistic expectations about what's going to happen, and knowledge that if it sucks now, that's just kind of emotional weather. But I did have some tougher spots later in the race when, like on the second, when I was looking for a hotel on the second day, I'd gone through Knoxville, which I love downtown Knoxville. But then West Knoxville went on forever and forever and forever. God. And tried to find a hotel in West Knoxville, and I could see there's a cluster of them like half a mile off the road, and that's all there is. So I go this half mile off the road, and all the hotels were full. So I just wasted that time and was pissed off, got back on the road and found a hotel way down the road in Lenoir City. And it was also like half a mile off the road, or 0.7 or something off the road. But that was what it was. And I called ahead and actually made a reservation there. And I kind of screwed up as I was approaching, because we're just going down this long highway. I forget. You remember what it's called, Jeff? This highway that goes out of, yeah, I don't remember. Like,
it's long though. It's just like
yeah,
never ending.
yeah. But eventually, like 5 miles before Lenore City, you turn left. And I turned left there, and I could see, oh, there's a Shell station or something on the right side of the road. But I don't want to make the effort to cross the road and go over there. And if I only got a few miles left, I
Yep.
probably got enough water to get there.
Yep.
Well, I didn't have enough water to get there, and it was hot. And I just really, those last few miles to Lenore City, I was just losing it. And, just in this downward spiral, going slower and slower and thirstier until finally, like a mile or 2 miles before the hotel, I found this like hot dog bus. There was this bus that was like a little hot dog stand, and that just totally saved my life. I had this huge cup of water and this huge limeade and a hot dog and a cookie or something, and I just sat there and cooled off. And so that was a rough patch, and I was just stupid because I didn't want to waste, a minute to cross the road to get water that I actually needed. And then it was worse the next afternoon. It was hot, and I was really spacing out. In the middle of the day, I would catch myself. There'd be weird, random things going through my head that suddenly I would speak for no reason. I'm like, what? Why did I say that? Why was I thinking that? And then I found myself like having conversations with people that weren't there.
Right.
And I know that's not good. And that's not something I've done before. So I just I found this like barn or something by the side of the road and went and lay down for 15 minutes. And it was very hot. But I just had to give my brain a little rest. And I was with it again after that. And right after that is when we had that second overpass scramble. So I had some real choice words for Laz and Carl after that.
Mine was, if you remember, you went by a hospital and you went down this long, like 4-mile stretch, country road, just straight downhill, like 4 miles. You crossed over a 4-lane, then you did like another 4-mile stretch somewhere else on the same road.
Yeah, it's like Jefferson City.
On that second half of that, I ran out of fluids. I ran out of fluids for the first time. And I was getting delirious like you from the heat because it was the middle of the day. It was like 3:00. Sun was just beating down. And I was getting like dizzy and stuff. I'm like, I got to get off the road now. And there's nothing out there. There was absolutely nothing out there. So I found a shady spot in a ditch that used to have what looked like an old asphalt driveway that went in maybe 10 feet and stopped. But it was covered in shade. I'm like, I'm going down right there. So I took my empty water bottle and used it as a pillow, and the driveway was somewhat uphill, so I put my feet uphill, elevated them, and I laid there for a solid hour and did not move. And it took that long to recover from it. It was pretty bad.
Wow. Yeah.
So you're sitting he's sitting on this driveway. You're sitting in this barn about 15 minutes because you're talking to yourself. Which that's so crazy. That's never happened to you before. And all the things that you've done, the 6-day race and that sort of thing. Yeah. And here it is, you're in the middle of HOTS and you are talking to people that are not there.
That was a new one.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was it the barn that just giving yourself 15 minutes to lay in that sweaty hot barn was just enough, huh?
Yeah, close my eyes and let my brain go off into la la land for 15 minutes.
Let it go where it wants to go.
Yep.
Now you said Knoxville. I'm assuming you went through there in daylight.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I went through there, I think it was probably a day and a half behind you at this point, but wherever Knoxville was on the course, I went through there at 1 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
That place was bumping down there.
Oh,
there were people smoking dope on every street corner. They're drinking open containers. There's needles all over the street.
Oh, man.
I did not stop going through there.
Maybe we should have grabbed the puff.
I mean, everybody wanted to talk to you. Hey, you got $20. You got this. You got that. I'm like, I was hauling ass through there just as quick as I could get through it. And as you recall, we actually had a runner, not to be identified, but a runner got robbed in Knoxville.
What?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't Bob. We know that because nobody could keep up with him. And he was going through the daylight. Somebody got robbed.
Yeah.
What did he
Yeah.
take his Ultimate Directions water bottle? That says Ultimate Directions on it. Give me that $30 water bottle.
I don't know the details behind it, but someone did get robbed. Yes.
Wow, that's crazy. Man.
I mean, it's all kind of dependent on time of day when you go through there. It's just, that could happen anywhere on the course, though. I mean, for crying out loud. You got all these Billy Bobs running around at 2 a.m. in the morning burning truck tires off. Like, oh my God. We were standing, me and the other guy, Nathan, we were standing next to a cemetery that had a street light there, and we're standing under a tree because the rain had just started to just dump. Like that was the only place for shelter. We're standing under this tree in the shadows, and this car pulls up, and we're thinking, okay, they see us. Something's going on here. Be prepared for anything. The guy just stops. He's got neon orange or purple lights under the car. He puts it in first gear and just proceeds to do a huge burnout. And just tore off into darkness. I'm like, what the hell was that all about? Never saw us. Never knew we were there. I'm like,
right now, Bob's going, man, I want to run that again, but I want to run it in the middle of the pack under the name Robert Hearn. And
right.
so I am. So I can see all of these fun things that are happening far behind you in the race.
And the Jessicas in the back, they're doing all the dancing all the time, the entire race.
Yeah. Exactly. Bob, when for you did you know that the suffering would be over soon? Did you have those moments when you look at your watch and you go, okay, I'm passing this. Okay, I'm about to wrap this up?
Probably not until Kimball.
Yeah.
Really.
Kimball's when it's like you smell the barn then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, the fourth night, if for those who listened to the previous one of these we did, I have to say that's one of the favorite podcasts that I've done. And it might sound a little narcissistic, but I've gone back and listened to it a few times because it really, you guys drew the story out of me in a way that I really like. And there's little nuggets in there that I still go back and mine myself. And I spent a lot of the time talking about, like all these spiritual insights and openings that I had on the third night.
Right.
And it's gotten to the point where that kind of experience is really one of the main motivators for doing these kinds of races. And so I was kind of eager for that, but I wasn't really getting it this race.
Really?
And I don't know if it's because it's kind of become a little too familiar. It's like, this is the third one of these I've done in addition to a bunch of multi-days. And I've learned a lot at the first two, and a lot of the procedures are just kind of habit at this point. And it's like, okay, I got this down. I'm good at this now. I know what I'm doing. So I'm not, exploring new psychological territory as much as I was the first time. But anyway, the fourth night, I had gone over Mount Dayton in the evening.
Yeah.
And that was actually very pleasant. I was really intimidated by Mount Dayton because I was really hot. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to lie in a hotel until it cools off because I cannot do that in the heat of the day. But then it was overcast and I went up the mountain and Laz and Sandra were there taking video of me and I was moving well. So I go down the mountain, I go into Pikeville, and then it's dark. And from Pikeville, you've got like this long, straight, flat highway that's like 40 miles of just dead flat straight. And it's the middle of the night. Yeah. And I started going down that and I was like, I don't know if other people have this happen. Sometimes you're in the middle of the night running on a flat road and it doesn't look flat. It looks like it's uphill.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this is what was happening to me. I was like, it's very obviously gradually uphill here, and it's going to be gradually uphill the whole 40 miles. I don't really remember that from the elevation profile. So I pulled up my elevation profile and saw this stretch, and it's like actually a very gradual downhill for the next 40 miles. And I'm like, okay, my brain is screwing with me. And so my thoughts started wandering off in this tangent about how and why my brain was screwing with me. And I sort of started to get back into this same sort of mindset I'd had on the last night of Vol State, where my brain is just like this antenna floating in free space. And if it's not too constrained by external signals, then I can sort of start to tune in to like these deeper realities and things. And so that finally was like the trigger for me to start getting into these, Zen spaces or
Yep.
whatever that I was after. But after an hour or so of that, it started raining, and that took all of my attention and management to deal with that.
Yep.
And it rained for the rest of the way from there to Kimball, um, off and on. I must have taken my poncho off and on about 20 times. Um, but then when I got to Kimball, I was starving because I had not had any breakfast. I had stopped everywhere, and there's like nobody has any biscuits. Nobody. There was one breakfast restaurant, but I would have had to sit down for like 20 minutes, and I wasn't going to do that. Um, but I made it to Kimball, and it's like, okay, all I got to do is another 14 miles, but I'm going to check in early and take a half-hour nap. But I, got to my room and took off my shoes, and my feet, oh my God.
They're on fire.
I've run through the two Vol States that I did. Both had thunderstorms, and that was my favorite part of the race because I was able to stay cool and run efficiently, and my feet were not really too bothered. But this time, my feet looked like they were from Mars because it's like,
Yeah.
I think it's because I had not I had a bunch of calluses that I had not bothered to remove, and I think what happened was the calluses absorbed that water and just like swelled up into like this mystery tissue. But it's like it wasn't blisters exactly, but my feet are just covered with this stuff that's like, what do I even do?
What's going on here?
If I wasn't almost done, I would have had to seriously consider whether to continue the race. But I just taped over everything and crossed my fingers. and
Wow.
Yeah. So after my half-hour nap, then I knew that the end was near. But then it had stopped raining, and it was very hot and super humid because, as Laz pointed out, it's just sucking up all that moisture back up into the air that just got rained down. So the last 14 miles were hot and humid, but I wasn't really racing against the clock, and I was just doing my due diligence, and I knew that it was going to get there. So yeah, around Kimball, I finally started to breathe easy.
I love this. You bring it up again. First of all, I love you listening all those times. And with Spotify now, boy, I'm getting a lot of money from Bob Hearn listening to those.
You are. Yeah.
Bob's like, oh, here comes another Lowe's commercial. Oh, it's Navy Federal again.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's Bear Chips. Oh, it's the iced tea thing coming up. But no, I love your why, and you talked about it there about going to these mental spaces, these weird avenues where you can explore the separation of mind and body. And
Yeah.
you have, and we may have talked about it on the last one. I've interviewed a lot of people since then, Bob, so you can forgive me. But you have an incredible sense of mindfulness. And what I mean by that is you seem to have a separation between what is happening to you and how you react to it, and you can separate yourself from your thoughts, from your emotions, from your whatever, and look at it almost like from a bird's eye view, and kind of almost observe you're observing your thoughts as this scientist. You're like this professor in a lab coat stepping back from Bob Hearn's mind and going, why is Bob thinking this? And what is going on with Bob here? And you're almost, it's like
third person.
Yeah, you do you do these long things because you crave this area where scientist Bob, this being of light, steps out from the body of Bob and can observe what's going on in the brain.
Well, it's a really interesting perspective. I mean, I have been doing mindfulness meditation for several years, but it's that perspective of being a scientist observing myself. It's almost like, this is the spiritual side of myself that I see as almost an opposition to, my scientific worldview that I've held for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But that's certainly true that one of the goals of mindfulness is to observe your thoughts and be aware and separate out the sensing and feeling and thinking from the reacting. And I do try to do that. Yeah.
I think it's kind of along those same lines. It was a little different for me. And I think for most people that complete or are fairly successful at these journey runs, they learn or have learned to divorce their mind from their body. I don't practice mindful meditation, but I think my background in the military, where you have to compartmentalize your brain to accomplish whatever it is and ignore everything else, that's helpful.
Oh yeah, and but you tend to get emotional.
Yeah,
yes, because Jeff gets it. I know, because Jeff left a comment. My wife had posted a picture. Like Jeff is on the course scrolling Facebook. Yeah, Jeff is on the course going like, oh, let's check out these. Let's see how many likes I have on this picture. And so I knew that Jeff was feeling down and starting to get emotional when my wife posted a picture of our dog.
Yes.
And Jeff commented, Tess is such a good dog. Please give her a treat for me.
Yep. That's true.
That's great.
I'm like, oh, Jeff's suffering. And then he posts again. He's like, my wife posted something about Father's Day. And in one of those great, like Ryan's a great dad posts, which I read and I'm like, yeah, you're right. And then Jeff goes, you're right. Pluck Daddy is a good dad. And I'm like, oh, Jeff.
So I could divorce my mind from the pain. In this case, it was blisters, severe hamburger feet. But I noticed as long as I was moving, I could do that pretty successfully. But when I stopped, because I knew I had to stop for rest at some point, when you get up, oh my God, it's just, all that pain is just flooding your brain all at once. It's just like, whoa, and you got to get moving to get rid of it again.
Yeah. And, everybody deals with that, but that kind of ties into, like, if there was a theme for me of this race, it was the really surprising contrast between the external realities of what it was I was doing and the perceptual world that I was living in. Like those last few miles into Lenore City, it was not that hard what I was doing, but it was a monumental effort. And then I was, dreading going over Dayton Mountain in the heat of the day, and just dying because I was already talking to myself, and it was effortless. I was just, I wasn't running up it, but I was walking effortlessly up it, and I was running once it leveled off. And this thing about your feet is, I think there's two things to that. There's something physiological, because when you stop, fluid accumulates. And so there's pressure there, and you start running on it. And that fluid has to be pumped back up by working muscles. But more than that, there's the, habituation to the pain, and your brain, some part of your brain, I guess this is the key for me. And this is sort of like the path of insight I was going down the last night, is that, our minds are made up of all these little pieces that are, the reality that is real for us is not the physical world of atoms and molecules and gases and things. It's the world of trees and people and relationships and feelings. And these realities don't exist in the real world. They exist in our head, and they're constructed by brain processes that happen. And those brain processes work the way they do for evolutionary reasons, because they want us to survive and reproduce and so forth. And I'm like running through this night, that's like, yeah, my feet stopped hurting because this little brain process decided that it wasn't the most effective thing, because it knows, that, okay, I'm going to have to run another 10 miles. It's not going to be, I've already tried to talk him out of running those 10 miles, and it's obviously not working. So let's stop that. But everything that you feel and everything that you think is, a result of thousands of these brain processes going on. I mean, it sounds trite to say that, but in that moment, that fourth evening, I was really experiencing this and feeling that my identity was not, an ordinary human atomic stream of consciousness, but I could feel that myself and my identity was made up of all of these little processes that are going on, trying to construct my reality in whatever way they think is best.
I knew I'd get the goods out of you again, Bob. I knew it. I knew it. I was waiting for this moment. I was waiting for this. I was setting you up. No, this is so cool to talk about this, because you talked about the spiritual side of you, and I talked about, the little scientist in a lab coat that looks like Bob, that's observing life. But have you had the revelation? You talk spiritually here. in these races that you do and in analyzing your brain, the most beautiful brain in ultra running, I'm going to call it right now. You may not win Ultra Runner of the Year, Bob, but you're winning most beautiful brain in ultra.
Beautiful mind.
In all of these explorations of why things are happening, why, separating yourself from making the conscious decision, like Bob Hearn is not making the conscious decision to do all these things. He is, the body's reacting, the mind is creating all of that. Have you had the spiritual awakening of destroying the self? Do you live in a space where you look at Bob Hearn as a character that this eternal being is playing? Have you had a moment of enlightenment because of all of this?
Well, I mean, that's what I get during or after these races is moments of enlightenment, and sometimes at other times. But I don't live in an enlightened state. I can say I've had enlightenment experiences, but there's this great book by Jack Kornfield, who's a great Buddhist teacher, called "After the Enlightenment, the Laundry," saying,
right.
Just because you've been enlightened doesn't mean you've suddenly transcended to another plane, and you got to take care of business and take care of your life. And
you still got to pay those bills.
Yeah.
Right. But still, it's so amazing. And so many people have so many different whys, right? I talk to people why they do these things is because they want to prove that they're as tough as their father, or they want to prove that they can overcome hard things or whatever. Your why of trying to get yourself to these moments, these spiritual awakening moments, these moments of just everything is firing and you're existing in this space between conscious thought and the world around you. I mean, that is the coolest why ever. I love it. Jeff, pressure's on, man. He smokes you after 10 miles. What's your why?
PBR at the end. Bravo. Just a nice cold beer, It's like, I'm a simple man.
Right.
So.
Everyone going, oh, Ryan and Bob are going down a trippy avenue, and all of a sudden Jeff goes PBR, and like, oh, thank God.
And we're done.
Thank God they saved us.
No.
What is next for you, Bob?
That's a tough one. Spartathlon is my favorite race. And last year, one thing I haven't talked about, I had this awesome race 2 years ago. Vol State ran the course record. And I kind of knew, and we talked about this during the podcast. It's like, I feel like I ran a perfect race, and that's the best thing I'm ever going to do. And it's all, I don't know what comes after, what comes after running a perfect race. And in fact, last year I was injured all year, and I sort of felt, well, I guess that was it. I had my perfect race, and I'm now officially over the hill, and I'm never going to recapture my former glory. And so this year, I just ran this 6-day race. I didn't hit the numbers I was after, but I won the race by over 100 kilometers, and I got through it healthy without any big injuries, which was a first for a 6-day. 2 months later, I come in, I run HOTS, and there's no such thing as a course record, but mine was the fastest of the 4 finishes on the longest course, so it's the next best thing.
Right.
And so I feel I kind of lost my train of thought. I was connecting it to your question. But what's next? Yeah. So I'm in this weird place where I feel like I'm back, but because I was injured last year, I did not run an auto qualifier for Spartathlon. So I had to enter the lottery. I was way down the wait list, and I just barely missed getting in. I'm at the top American left on the wait list, and so I'm not into Spartathlon, which really sucks because I DNF'd last year for the very first time.
You want revenge?
And I have unfinished business there, but I'm going to go crew somebody at Spartathlon, Chris Rice. The elephant in the room here is Laz has this new race, the Third Circle of Hell, which is longer. It's like 370 miles, and it's like, what is it, like 30 major mountain crossings or something? It's just utterly abusive. And when I first saw that, I'm like,
Why
okay,
not?
whatever. Why would anybody want to do that? But now there's like this family, Labs or Vol State is like the undergraduate course, and HOTS is like the master's course, and
Yep.
Third Circle is the PhD. And there's people who are doing all three of them. And that's called like the Salute to Insanity or something. So there's a part of me that wants to do all three of them. I wasn't going to do Vol State because it would be too close to Spartathlon because, well, now there's no Spartathlon.
Right.
I kind of don't think, I think I'm leaning towards maybe doing the Third Circle, but not Vol State, because I'm the king of the road, which I was recognized by the Tennessee State Legislature, and because Heart of the South, the winner is the Queen of the South, so I'm now the king and the queen.
But just know the state of Tennessee has passed some interesting laws lately. They may not recognize me the legislature and Queen of the South. I'm just going to say that.
Yep. But this Third Circle of Hell, if you win, I believe the title is Emperor of the Hills.
Yes.
So there's a part of me that says, well, I need to complete the set.
Got to get that. Gotta get it.
Yeah, I haven't decided. There's also a 48-hour. I serve on the board of GOMU, the Global Organization of Multi-Day Ultra Runners.
Yeah,
and we maintain records for ultra distances that IAU does not maintain records for, like 72-hour. And we put on multi-day world championships. So we're putting on a 48-hour world championship event in England in August. So that's another possibility for me. Except the last time I ran a 48-hour, I swore off them forever. And I said, 48 hours is just too abusive. I'm not going to do anymore. So
you've got to run too much.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of opportunities here. And you really, you kind of have to. You are, Bob Hearn, all hail Bob Hearn, king of the road, queen of the road, emperor of the hills. That is a hell of a title. That's a business card waiting to happen, Bob.
Yeah. Or at least a tattoo.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I'm in the same boat. I actually, first heard, I think he started advertising this Third Circle back in December or January of.
Yeah.
And I actually signed up for Third Circle in February, but it was contingent upon completing HOTS. Yeah. So I've completed HOTS now. So I'm on the wait list. Who knows where? But yeah, there's a chance I may see you there, and I will trip you this time.
Okay.
Please, Bob, if you guys both end up doing this Third Circle race, would you yell at him if he doesn't wait for biscuits?
Right.
You'd be like, Jeff,
you better get those biscuits.
Slow down. Jeff, slow down.
What did I tell you? Have you learned nothing? So, yeah, Third Circle is pretty high on the list right now.
Well, I'm just going to have to get Christina to take a whole lot of pictures of Tess to put on Facebook so you can get through your low points by commenting on pictures of my dog.
That poor dog. Right.
Yeah. Well, Bob, if you do end up doing Third Circle, we'd have to, we've got an episode called All Hail King Bob Hearn and All Hail Queen Bob Hearn. We'd have to do an episode called All Hail Emperor.
It's funny. Every time you mention King Bob, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Minions.
Yeah.
King Bob and King Bob.
Yeah.
But please, will you do that if you do third circle and you win? Will the Emperor come on the Adventure Jogger to talk about this stuff?
Anytime. You guys are awesome. Always love hanging out here.
Hey, and I appreciate all that Spotify money coming from Bob Hearn listening.
Yes.
I do have a short story.
What? Do you want to end? Bob, do you want to end your episode on a short story?
Go for it, Jeff.
So at mile X, because I really don't recall what mile it was, I had a little movement action.
Yeah. People your age tend to have that.
I think it was maybe due to Hunt's Pizza the day before in the heat.
Yeah.
And I carried in a pack for a while and got hot and ate it anyways. Yeah. But a little incident and ended up going about 5+ miles like that.
So you poop in your shorts for 5 miles?
I didn't say poop. So I find a Dollar General.
Yeah.
And I said, "Where's your restroom?" And they're like, "It's in the back." So I start heading that way, and she goes, "You need the key." So she hands me the key, and I go back there, and I go in the bathroom, and I'm cleaning up.
Yeah.
And it dawns on me that this cleanup's not going so well. So I'm running out of things to clean with.
Just know Bob's parents are going to be listening to this.
So I, much like Black Canyon race many years prior, take off my shorts, and
you're in a Dollar General with no pants on in the bathroom,
using the sink.
Yeah.
Wash my shorts with soap,
Yep.
and put them back on and moved out.
Congratulations, Bob.
I mean,
it's on your win.
It's these things happen, I just.
And that's ultra running for you.
It is.
That it is. Hey, great talking to you, Bob. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, we stopped here, and then we got to wait till it